entertain a motion to table these.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Eugene to table. Roll call, please.
Mr. Flanagan. Yes. Mr. Hughes. Abstain. Mr. Mokel. Yes. Mr. Webb. Yes. Mr. Wyatt. Yes. Mr. Cantz. Yes. Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right. Here, we're on to our transfers and appropriation agenda. I think we only have, oh, it is just front and back, so everything's there. We're not used to, Ryan, we're not used to being this
There it
short.
is. I have to turn the page over.
I approve of front and back, that's a
Thank
good
you.
So, now that we've switched how we transfer we do not bring job transfers, the backfilling before the council any longer, our agenda is much smaller, so we'll go ahead and get started on that.
Okay, I'm gonna read today.
Okay.
Under County General 1000, we have corner 133. We have 220 operating supplies, positive 15,000. Then the negative is at 311 contractual services, negative 15,000 for a total transfer of 0.
I'll make the motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. Do we have any questions?
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
I just,
Warner.
where's Gavin at? There it is. My apologies, I got your report a little bit late, not your fault, my fault. I don't know if you explained that in there, so could you just tell me real quick what supplies that you're having to get that are extra? Contractual services that you don't have to pay no more.
So what we did is we are moving money out of our contractual services, out of autopsies, into operations because we had extra money left over in 2023 for supplies. We purchased those supplies either through billing, having them invoice us, or putting on the credit card. There was an issue in December with the credit card, so we couldn't put it on the credit card, and the bill came in January. We tried to accrue those in the encumbrance, and those got missed, and it was outside of the encumbrance date. And so we had supplies that came in that were from 2023. Those invoices hit 2024. And so we're moving money out of contractual services into operations to cover those. And those were being, we had computers, we had jackets, we have new uniforms that had been purchased in 2 coroners. There's a whole entire wall of supplies and PPE and stuff that we can show you. So that's what
you think your money for autopsies will get you through the rest of the year?
Yes.
Last year you had to keep coming back and asking for more.
Last year we did not have to come back for autopsies. We had extra money left over in autopsies. We're projected to have around 470 to 500 cases this year. We're at 234 in the report that shows. So we are trending lower than what we were budgeted.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any additional?
That's it for me.
All right. Roll call, please.
Sure. Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Wyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right, moving on.
Okay, on to other, we have opioid grant 8199. And we have 231 incentives, negative 5,400. 400 kiosks, positive 5,400 for a total transfer of 0.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. This is a grant. That should cover the rest of the year. Do you have any additional questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Ms. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right, now to the next one.
Okay, we have Delaware County Fair and Expo 4911, 390. Capital outlays, negative 1,200. I'm sorry, that was other services and charges, my bad. Negative 1,200. Then under 536 equipment, we have positive 1,200 for a total transfer of 0.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. We had some fun with a check getting sent to the wrong location and not getting cashed right, and some other, finally getting, let's see, the cash, the check for a canceled order. That's what it was. Okay. Do we have any additional questions for the Fair Board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Wyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right, moving on.
Okay, appropriations, we have county general 1,000, under communications 124. We have line 112-101, communication tech, positive $2,500 for a total of $2,500.
Make the motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. Fred, you want to explain this one? It's a little,
Yeah, so we had a supervisor step down, and the line that he's being put into as a communication tech was already funded at 42,000, and for an employee with years of service, that should have been funded at 46,000. So it's to make up the difference for the other half a year.
any additional questions for Fred? Hearing none, roll call please.
Ms. Blanken?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes? Yes. Mr. Cantz?
Yes.
Mr. Mokel? Yes. Mr. Webb? Yes. Mr. Wyatt? Yes. Ms. Piper?
Yes.
Okay, clerk 125, we have a 135 stipend, positive $2,500 for a total of $2,500.
Make the motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. I'm sure we have plenty of questions for you.
I kind of thought so.
Yes.
Start with your explanation, please, Mr.
Okay, Clerks Association asked the legislature to help us out a little bit with the amount of work that we do on general election years. When the clerk's office is a busy office anyway, and we knew that when we come in, but especially in general election years where we have to, for one thing, hire and train, 250 sometimes senior citizens to get them to work in a situation for 16 hours in one day and not make any mistakes and get all the logistics of the equipment delivered and set up and brought back and put away. And so, general election years are just a special monster. So the legislature saw fit to make this available. It's not mandatory, it's available for a $2,500 stipend for the clerk, and I think the Auditors Association did the same thing for the auditor. That's why we're both on here. But that's, that the clerk part of it is just for the excessive amount of work that we have in the general election year. It's not an every year thing, just 2 out of 4.
So it's only for the presidential, like the,
Be the county general and the presidential. Yeah, there's two general elections
Okay,
in a
so-
4-year cycle.
so it doesn't include.
That's why they didn't include it in the salary to make it as stipend, because there'd be a couple of years it wouldn't be in there.
Right, next year there's no election, so it doesn't count when you run the city election either.
Right. City elections are big, but they're not that big.
Okay. So biannually.
And so to be clear, is it the discretion of the council to do this? It's not a requirement.
That's true.
It comes out of the general fund. For what it's worth, I think both of these, I'll speak for myself, kind of caught me a little bit off guard. Not that you don't do a lot of work, and I think we all recognize that. For years, this has always been part of both, you and the auditor's job is to, do what it is that you do, and we're appreciative of that. I don't know that it sets a good precedent for the rest of the, individuals who, are in charge of the departments. I guess my pleasure would be to, table this and have further discussions in regards to, the clerk's stipend, at budget time.
My only answer to that was that budget time, this isn't an annual thing. So, it'd be kind of hard to put it in the budget, and put it in and take it out, and put it in and take it out. Where, as a stipend, it could be, put on each time during the general election.
Well, that's the rub, so to speak, is that they're saying that in the off year, but in reality, we could get a stipend any year,
I'd take it.
theoretically. So, I mean,
You offering? We can make a deal, man.
right? So that's why it's to me, a little wonky, but.
Nope, you're fine. I guess my objection, and I'm gonna put these two together, obviously, you're the man standing at the podium, but kind of the same thing. when I read the notes or the law, it said that when the clerk fulfills the role of the, voter registration clerk, right, does a dual role, he's eligible for this stipend. And I think I looked back at our budget, and I believe you had a voter registration clerk that left in January. Does that sound close to that? And you have somebody working, I thought Mr. Foley was your voter registration clerk. He was replaced. We had one, I mean, we backfilled that position. Yeah. So you do have a person in that position? Yes, I do. Okay. Well, my understanding of it was that the stipend would be if you didn't have a person in that position. Now, the stipend's based on if the clerk does run the voter registration office also. Some counties have, prior, I can't remember what year, the voter registration office used to be run by the county chairman. And, a lot of counties, including Delaware County, finally went away from that. But they do tag that job then onto the clerk when they do that. So this is made available for clerks that are actively involved in the election by running that voter registration office also. Mr. Freeman, can you check? I'm certain I saw that somewhere. Can somebody check to see if there's any language in there regarding the, voter registration clerk being absent, which would then qualify the clerk for the. It's only available for people that are doing both. The other issue I have with it, not that you guys don't work very hard, everybody deserves, everything we can get, and if I was in that position, I'd take my shot for it as well. I think, nobody should be faulted for trying to seek money that's available, to be appropriated to them. I guess for me, I'm kind of looking at the optics of it as well. I know we've got 500 plus employees. Many of them didn't get anything at all last year. We don't know if any of them will get anything this year. We haven't got the numbers yet. I remember the sheriff stood up at that podium right there and forfeited about $8,000 of his salary so we could make our budget this year. And that's not 1 year. That's compounding. That's every year. 8,000 this year, 8,000 more next year, 8,000 the year after. And keep in mind, the sheriff's pension is based off the 3 highest years' salary. So that was a pretty selfless act. And I think if we start giving out stipends, I don't know. I think it conflicts with that team effort for us to get under the line that we needed to get under for the financial crunch that we were in at budget time. So for me, the fact that we have so many employees that don't get anything, the fact that I'm pretty certain it had something to do with the voter registration clerk, and the fact that the sheriff forfeited his money, I wouldn't really be in support of it. Not that I don't support what you guys are doing. I'm just sharing my opinion on it. How many employees do you have in your office? 20, counting the voter registration and clerk's office, 23. So 2,500 will be spent on the 23 people? No, it goes into the clerk's salary. Into the clerk's salary. Yeah. Other comments? I had noted that the statute authorizes both this and the auditor's stipends, doesn't take effect until July 1st. Had contacted the State Board of Accounts. They said they wouldn't take exception if we approved an additional appropriation prior to July 1st. But then they also said that you'd have to go back and amend the salary ordinance after July 1st in order to meet their requirements. It doesn't make sense to me that we would appropriate prior to the time the statute took effect. So, and I think maybe piggybacking on what Mr. Mokel said, I'm going to move to table this one. Second.
And we have a motion to table from Bill with a second from Eugene. A roll call on the motion to table.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Ms. Hughes.
Yes.
Hance.
Yes.
Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Piper.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving on to the auditor's request.
Auditor 126, 135 stipend, positive $2,500, total $2,500.
Make the motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. Do we need additional discussion on this one as well?
Move the table.
Second.
Motion to table by Bill, second by Ryan. Roll call on the table.
Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Mr. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Piper.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Okay, under other, we have motor vehicle highway distribution 1176, 362, repair and maintenance software, positive 9,756, total 9,756.
Make the motion to approve.
Oh, second?
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. Any questions?
Well, this is for the tracking of our fleet maintenance. So we currently have it, this is just an upgrade.
Does it get upgraded every year?
I'm gonna say no. This is the first upgrade that I've been through since I've been out there, and I went out there in 17.
What does your tracking do, please?
I'm sorry?
What does your tracking do?
So, every time a vehicle is serviced or it has new tires, any kind of parts, anything, that's put into this system for each individual piece of equipment that we have.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Cantz. Yes. Mr. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Piper.
Yes.
Motor vehicle highway restricted, 1173, 311 contractual services, positive $199,097.77 for a total of $199,097.77.
Motion to approve.
I will second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. Any questions on this one?
This is for paving that's gonna extend through, the community crossing. So Brooks did community crossing and it's gonna extend it, a mile further. It's gonna be on 350 north between 400 and 500 east. And it's gonna be a 1.5 inch surface, stone sides, and the pavement markings.
All right, roll call please.
Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Mr. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Piper.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would like to read the motion?
Motion to approve financial transfers into amend salary ordinance with like reductions.
Second?
Motion by Eugene, second by Dan. Roll call please.
Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Mokel. Yes. Mr. Webb. Yes. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Piper.
Yes. All right, moving on to ordinances and resolutions. We have a first reading of the job description ordinance, which is 2024-015. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2024-015. Introduce, excuse me, thank you.
Which one is this?
This is an ordinance adopting County of Delaware, Indiana job descriptions.
Moved.
Second?
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. Any discussion?
Have all the elected officials and department heads seen the final job descriptions and been able to read through them?
Pam, have they come by and picked up their packets? Yeah.
Well, that raises the question, how many who aren't sitting in this
Well, I
room
mean,
haven't
Pam,
heard
you wanna
it?
come to the microphone
I've
so we
sent
can,
out to people that have not picked up their packets. So I don't know who must have just forgot.
No.
so this is just an introduction.
Are we gonna start discussion?
Yeah, we're in discussion,
Okay.
yes.
So, we've had this for about 2 weeks. I know this is just introduction, so I'm gonna introduce my objections. I think that, I don't know, I'm sure you guys have always heard phone calls as well. When we were up here, I think that 95% of this thing is probably solid, and I think we'll end up following it in some form, for the future, because we had to have something. My concern is the other 5% where there's some, I know we're speaking about the job descriptions, but I'm kind of talking about these two as a whole right now as I'm discussing this. I had a
We're
couple,
only discussing the job descriptions and the job classification and maintenance plan today.
Sure.
We're not talking about the
The
salaries
money.
themselves.
right, it's not the money, just classifications
Correct.
and the descriptions of the jobs.
Correct.
So I had a couple employees reach out, different ones. I didn't catch it when we were going over the stuff. They obviously caught it because it involved them, and they reached out and shared their concerns and pointed out some things that kind of concerned me as well, with some of the classifications of different employees in different tiers, the descriptions of certain jobs. I know some people were frustrated that, their salary or hourly, now it's gonna put them in a salary, and that can affect when we do get to the money portion, a good portion of, what they earn. Um, Another individual pointed out the fact that the study did not take into consideration the state money that was brought involved, or that was being involved in their budget, and the fact that their budget was getting ready to dramatically increase, pretty much double. Same thing with employees, and they would be locked into this tier, with these other employees at this whatever rate we decide, they're in that tier with those people. And I'll just throw off one of the other ones. I'm going to use this as an example for this classification system and job description. At one point, I believe the highway department director, the court administrator, 911 director, and a couple others were all in the same tier. And when they're all in the same tier like that, the young lady sat up there and told us a couple weeks ago that we have to treat them all as equals. You can't deviate from one that you give to the other. And we all sit up here last year, and the judges ordered us to increase a certain individual's salary. And the council, there's a negotiation, if you will, and the salary was increased. If we have another situation like that, and we get ordered again, this person's in these tiers with all these other employees, we would then have to either raise all their salaries or put ourselves in litigation again with these people by not raising their salaries, because then they could then come to us and say, well, you raised their salary, now you have to raise ours, we're in the same.
Can I interrupt you?
Please.
I don't think that's accurate. So the baseline that's being developed by these classification groupings is just that, it's a baseline for new hires at that position. So if the health department administrator left or somebody in the highway department left, the base salary has been set at X dollars.
That's not what she said though. She indicated when we were in this meeting,
Everyone in that classification will be set.
That rate, hourly rate.
well, moving forward, those people in those salaries, if something changes with one, it has to change with all of them.
No,
That's what she said.
no.
I asked specifically, and she said if we don't do that, we're gonna open ourselves to litigation.
No, because if you start developing a years of service, increase, you develop some other performance-based increase, all those things may differentiate that group of people. So there's gonna be people with different salaries in that block. In most cases, I would say, actually. So,
But again,
setting
we're
the
not talking
baseline.
salaries with this ordinance.
I understand that, but my argument is that when we agree to the classifications and we agree to the descriptions, we lock those employees into those tiers. So when we do talk salaries, they're going to be affected by that, right? And my concern is, I don't understand the rush to do this. I don't know why we can't just,
We've been working on this for over 15 months.
I get that, but we just got it 2 weeks ago. So I don't understand why we can't just say, thank you for the study, and then use this as a template to make our decisions during the budget time. Why do we have to make it an ordinance? Why do we have to lock it in? Why can't we use it as an unofficial template where we can then make the changes we want, and we're not obligated to anything? Matt said that there's gonna be a committee. Why couldn't the committee take this study, take the 95%, that's great, change the 5% that we all, either agree or disagree that may not quite be as the way they present it, and then adopt that? That's the concerns that I have. That's all I wanted to share.
But I wanna make sure we address your concerns about the exempt, non-exempt, that's a federal regulation, that's not us just being willy-nilly up here making decisions. You've had some employees that should fall under different categories with that FLSA. So, I mean, that's way above our pay grade at the federal level.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you pointed it out, but some of those people in the tiers are 32 hours, some are 40 hours, that whole mess there.
Well, your FLSA there's multiple things that put you into those buckets by federal guidelines. So if you make a certain amount of money, or if you are a supervisor, or I think the other ones, like if you make policies, there's like different buckets. And if you have one checkbox, one thing you check off of that, yes, I do that, that puts you in where you have to follow these FLSA guidelines.
Well, I also
We want to
noticed,
make sure we're not putting ourselves in a position to break any federal regulations.
well, I noticed that the one in that tier that I was discussing, all of them were salary except for one. One of them was hourly. I'm not sure the format for how this was developed. I did see an email this morning. I think it came out yesterday. I didn't see it till this morning, so I didn't get to read the details. But someone brought up a good point and said, we don't understand the criteria of how they come up with these positions. So if we create a new position in the future, how do we know what tier to put that in? I'm assuming that email that came out, that's buried in there somewhere. I didn't get a chance
The
to read
committee
it all.
would work to determine that.
It's all based on the criteria that's described in the job description. So from a process standpoint, this is the first reading for these two ordinances, the job descriptions and job classifications. There'll be a second reading, but after this first reading, after this discussion, there should be, I think, a discussion, a committee, discussion or a group, to make sure that we're reviewing this. Primarily because from a job description standpoint, I was telling Eugene earlier that, I just received those job descriptions from Pam last week. We are approving every single one of those job descriptions. Not that we're all gonna read every single one of them, but there should be at least some semblance of a review on those job descriptions by us in that capacity. So that in and of itself probably warrants, a prolonging of this process, so to speak, that Ryan is describing. So to me, we're reading this first ordinance. This is a step one to just bring it to the table, correct? And then we review that and review those and then continue those discussions. I do think that the HR committee component that is described in here, can that be developed? We can develop that, I guess, before
And we can use
anything's
finance
passed.
committee.
What I'm getting at is, we normally have a committee for everything else. For everything that we do, we have a committee. The committee takes it back, they study it. They then bring it to the council and say, this is what we've decided, this is what we've come up with. And now we're doing this in reverse.
On
We're
the finance
taking a,
committee, the
we're
finance
taking
committee
a word
has
of
been
a
meeting.
different, of an outside company instead of our own committee. We should be doing the committee first and then doing this. Somebody just tell me what the urgency is.
We
Tell me
have
the
had a committee, Ryan, the finance committee has been meeting with WIS, Wagner, Erwin, Shealy for months.
That's not the committee I was told we were gonna do with this.
I'm just saying, you were saying there's no committee reviewing it. We've been going over there. And like when Matt couldn't attend, Jim's gone over there. Like after finance, have gone over to their office and sat down with them
Their recommendation was to create an HR committee,
on top
which
of
is what, on top to actually manage
once
this
we get
process.
this in place.
And then once we get this in, I seen the letter today that they've submitted a consulting fee for up to $16,000 a year would be tied into that.
Well, that's their average based on the 80 some other counties that they work with. So this is a process that's not new. They're well established. Many counties use them. Matter of fact, this past weekend, Matt and I were at the AIC training and we spent time with Blackford County and Randolph County, and they both Blackford and Henry County utilize their services on an annual basis to do those job description updates. Ed and I met with them yesterday, and for the most part, those job description updates are when you're creating new jobs. They're not necessarily, now sometimes they do an update to an existing job description, but for the most part, what they were telling us yesterday was if it's a brand new job that's having to have a brand new job description created, and it takes them, they said, around 45 minutes to 60 minutes to go through the rubric and try to put that point system to figure out which bucket which category they fit in, and then from there on the ABCD, like based on how many points they have, what that hourly salary would look like. So it varies, right? There's no way we could say, yes, it's gonna cost up to 16. That's just an average that they gave us to give us an idea. But it's very common for the other counties are utilizing that resource as well. So
I mean, I'm
it's
not,
not just unique to us.
I'm not objecting to the study as a whole. Again, I started off my conversation by saying I think it's needed and we have to utilize it in some form. My concern is that we just got it. I think we should slow it down a little bit. I don't like the idea of being locked in, and it kind of feels like we're subcontracting out the duties of the council and the HR department. Like this is the stuff we're supposed to be doing. So I don't know why we would pay someone thousands of dollars a year when that's what we're elected to do.
I agree with you on that. That's not gonna be up to us, that's up to the commissioners. We can't employ them.
The contracts with them.
Those are my concerns.
Wait a minute, say that again, Bill? We can't enter into a contract with them. It's up to the commissioner. Right. We can only ask, but it would be our recommendation theoretically, in theory.
That'd be no different than when you and Bill and I came before the commissioners and asked for contract to do the salary study in the first place.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's an annual, right?
That's what they do with the other counties that they service.
But it's an annual renewable contract. In other words, you don't sign up for 5 years or 10 years.
My understanding.
Correct. So if by chance the council decided, maybe in the first year to help smooth out maybe some of the wrinkles, we might engage them if council so decided to do so. We could see.
I believe I forwarded that agreement to all of you yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
The agreement says it's outlined per hour, so we don't use them all, there's no cost. So even though you have an agreement, that doesn't mean it's gonna cost you anything if you don't use them. They give us the number of roughly 16,000 as a guideline for your budget. So if you opt out to use them at all, there's no cost to the council.
And that's just an average first year, and it could go over.
Well, it could go over, but they anticipate it going down over time because you utilize it less as you understand the process and how to classify these jobs.
So I'm gonna express a couple concerns. One is that we have mixed, feedback from department heads, elected officials on their feelings about whether or not they've been given enough, information or they have signed off on these job descriptions and or classifications. So I do think that we have to Ryan's point, I have not talked to, other than maybe one, I have not been approached, I don't think, by anybody else. Happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about it. But there's definitely some discourse relative to, whether it's the descriptions or the classifications, one or the other. I do think before we adopt, we should get as much of it correct as we can before we adopt it. I know there was a push from Irwin and Shield to say we could do it and change it later, but why,
I don't think you change job descriptions out.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe you can change job descriptions out.
Well, they've already sent the final bill. We'll be charged hourly.
What they submitted to us was the job description signed off by each department head.
But they are our job descriptions.
If you decide to use them, that's what the question is on this ordinance. Do you decide to use them? If you don't decide to use them, they're not.
We can make tweaks to the job description
And if you do,
before we approve them.
I don't believe you can. That's the way I understood it. What we understood yesterday in our meeting.
Yes,
That's what
and
we're
they
trying
don't
to
want us
prove
to
here.
do that. Right, yeah, they don't want us to do that.
If you change them, I said, that's my whole point. We're backing ourselves in a corner.
No, we're not.
I think we are.
Ryan, we put hours and hours on this.
I've had it for 2 weeks.
Well, because it was just finished 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But, you didn't get it any later than anyone else. No, yeah, well, went out 2 weeks ago. But they're wanting us to do what you're doing with the ordinances, first, whatever, and then we'll go back and make the changes. Yeah. Because I've had several people come to me that they're not agreeable with
the
I do
money.
wanna clarify
They don't want
that,
the job, sorry.
It's not the job descriptions that they're complaining about, it's the money.
right. So just to reiterate what was discussed a couple weeks ago in the process, all the department heads have been working with HR and with WIS for months and months and months. We're talking over a year at this point, to get information over to them so they can run these classifications and figure out essentially the buckets that everyone falls into. It's my understanding that WIS has documents back from department heads saying that they have looked these over and
And
signed
they
off
approved
on
them.
it and approved it.
Mhm.
So, now I'm hearing there's some current concerns with some job descriptions, but they were signed off and provided back before we got a final anything from WIS.
One of the people I spoke to was a department head, and I believe that person told me that they don't recall doing that. Not saying it didn't happen, I'm just passing on what was said to me.
Because this company's been doing this for a long time for a lot of counties, so they make sure they have all their ducks in a row. We were assured.
Each
Bill
department
and
head
Matt and I
met
sat there.
with Wagner and Shealy, each department met with them. And then when that was sent over, they had to sign off on it. So,
And this is just the job description portion. We're not
Right.
talking anything financial at this point.
So
This is just the first reading too.
I guess my question is, are there any department heads in here who haven't met with them that? Everybody in here, any department heads who haven't met with the firm? That are in? I got some issues with, they never got back with us. Okay. So Tommy's not at the mic, but what he said was he had some issues with them never returning the phone call or email or getting back with them, and he had some issues with the descriptions. One of the things Matt said a second ago that kind of concerns me is he said that the company's the ones pushing us to adopt this. That alone right there kind of gives me some concern. Why would they care if we adopt this right away? I think they said when they were at the podium, the county has a huge contingent liability. And they're trying to protect us. Only if you cut that, it's on YouTube, you can watch it. What's the liability?
We're not adhering to FLSA at this time.
That's one of them. That's the one point I'm getting at, though. I think we can cherry pick the portions of that we want from this study and make the changes to the ones that we don't. And then make it our own.
We invested a lot of money for professionals to do this and take the bias out of it. That's the one thing that is nice about having a third party do this. We all know our employees. We all know what they do. It's an opportunity. It's the same reason a lot of other counties utilize this service.
How many counties you call?
Had over 80 out of the 92 utilize this process, these types of job descriptions, this whole system that they've essentially created. The vast majority of the state utilizes them.
I think there's a lot of merit to, if we were the first county that these people had come out and wanted to do this job study and work performance and classification and so forth, I think we would have a lot and probably more questions. To me, it feels like, they probably have gotten I'm going to say all of the bugs worked out. Not that perhaps somebody in some department might feel like there's something that, for some reason, they don't adhere to or don't like the way the job description is written. Would be my guess that a lot of what they've already put in here has already been adopted primarily by 80 of the 92 counties. I don't know that it's going to be perfect. Somebody, in saying that, again, I go back to an individual that might say, not you, Ryan, speaking more specifically of the individuals who are in charge of these department heads. But it seems to be pretty tried and true, if we're the 81st county out of 92 to
take a look at this, I would feel like and hope that, they pretty much have it laid out the way it should be, and, again, if any of the other counties have adopted this, I would guess the language is pretty much the same. And so I feel pretty comfortable. I'd say it's probably true, the classifications are probably the same theoretically and based on the actual titles, but the job descriptions probably are unique, depending on what we do versus,
And we are unique because we're the only county out of 92 that has employees that work 32 hours. They said that.
it's got to have their job description.
Yeah, it's just the job.
I know, I'm just
So-
pointing out that there are differences between us and those other counties.
Matt had asked me yesterday, about like the rubric, so that WIS uses to figure out the classifications and the different buckets, that the different job descriptions go into, and I do wanna make sure I share that it's, the FES, which is the Factory Evaluation System. It's a federal guide the U.S. Office of Personnel and Management utilizes, and that's what their rubric is based off of. So it's not like something just like willy-nilly they pulled out of the air. They're using, a classification system that is,
Yeah, I mean, I asked that for specifically because I don't believe that we should be paying another dollar after today to maintain this system. That's my personal opinion. We have 3 people in HR. We have been given hundreds of job descriptions. We should be able to take that and run with it, at this point. That's part of the reason why I asked that. It doesn't appear it's that simple. Had I known that, I might have been a little bit more, pushy during the process to figure out how we were gonna maintain this long term, but, that apparently isn't the case, but, Gavin, do you wanna say something?
Yeah, Gavin Green, Delaware County Coroner. I did see the study on Councilperson Webb's, Facebook page, and so I zoomed in on some of them. And one of the things, and again, I don't want it to be taken out. Yes, I completely agree with the study, and yes, it needs to be adopted. However, I do have some concerns, just like Tommy did, is it said that for myself and my chief deputy, even though with the 32 and a half or however, it said that our full-time status was 1,680 hours. And that's not the case because we're on call at least 60 hours a week. And so that's where the description was great. And I did meet with them and it was a very lengthy, and they did call me back and have follow-up questions about that. And our exempt employees that get paid per case, I know they're hourly. There was no hourly section on there because they don't get paid per hour, it's per case. But it showed that for our salaries that our hourly time was, full-time was 1,680. And that's where I would have then turned around and come back and said, hey, we need to have some language in there that it's not that, because I don't just clock out at right at my hours and everything. And so that was, I saw that and I would have like said, hey, can we discuss this? How did you come to that 1,680? Is that gonna lock in? Because I don't want somebody to come back and say, well, your hourly rate is this per your job description. I'll say, no, that job description is not correct when it comes to the hourly. Everything else was great. So I just wanted to put that out there, that what I did see, I think that does need to be passed, but there are some tweaks that if you adopted it today, are you backing yourself into a corner saying, well, we adopted that and that's what it was. You should have said, hey, if you had some concerns then about that, you should have raised it up then. But so that's,
we're not adopting anything today. It's first reading, but, I do wonder if that was something, like, I know a lot of, I don't know if it's a state statute, but the coroner's office is considered, I don't know if they got that from like state statute from the time.
Okay.
Not what's actually worked, because I know your office is pretty unique
right.
when it comes to what you do. So I'd want to ask that question, but
I would too. So that's why when I pick up my
Yeah.
copy today and I'll look at our section. So I just wanted to bring that up, what I saw.
I'd like to make a comment real quick.
Yeah.
Sure. Just because we passed first reading now, Ms. Hughes and I agree that second reading doesn't have to happen next month. We can take as much time before we get to a second reading as possible. Also like to circle back, and my first question to elected officials and department heads about whether they received the job descriptions I'd like to have asked the second question, or at least pursued it, which is, I want them all to, if they have it, if they don't, get it, read it, and then come with questions to the council. I would actually like to have them sign off that they have read it, they do agree with it, or a list of what their concerns are. Every department before our second
Next
reading,
meeting.
before our next reading.
Even before next meeting.
Actually, before
We don't have
next
to read it,
meeting.
we don't have to do our next reading next meeting, but
Right, yes,
have that returned back to us, acknowledging,
and have a list of their concerns, because Gavin brought up a legitimate point, Dominic brought up a legitimate point. So I think we need to have, we can pass the.
Pam, do you mind, do that for me, please?
So,
Would you be able to help facilitate that for us?
I can do that.
Okay.
I can just take care of it for you.
I have something I wanna wait.
I do have one more statement on the litigation piece or the contempt. The FLSA issues, if they do exist, those could be dealt with today. But that has nothing to do with this study. If there is, we're out of compliance on something, that should have been dealt with many moons ago, not today. I don't believe we're gonna get, strong-armed by the fact that we're out of compliance from an FLSA standpoint. That should have been dealt with, if that's the case. It has nothing to do with this, in my opinion.
I just want a quick follow-up. I did receive a text, give me permission to share the name of the gentleman I spoke with. The department head was Jamie Bain, the health administrator. And the concern that he had said, was that study was based off of their workload from 2024, I believe, or the year before. And he pointed out the fact that their department, with that state money they're getting, he's about to get way more employees. He's about to get way more money in his budget. Everything's gonna double, triple, whatever. And he's still locked in this tier based off of this, study that happened a year previously. So that was something that, he pointed out that I didn't catch at first, that goes to the job descriptions and the tiers. So, those are the little bugs that I think need to be ironed
And if
out.
there are new employees, then there would be new job descriptions.
If he's talking about himself,
Yeah.
he's talking
Well,
about himself.
and we're not talking about the financial aspect of this still, but
Well, kind of, because if he's
his
in that
budget falls
tier,
out of county general.
what he's saying is he's blocked in a tier with other people where his workload and his financial responsibility may have put him in a different tier with, people, I guess another higher tier up. So his compensation is gonna be tied to the people that are in the tier with him. And I know people keep saying that we can deviate from that, but I mean, Ed just said it a second ago, they said, no, you gotta stick with everybody in the group. It's, the rising tide lifts all boats in that tier. Everybody's equal in that tier.
Hopefully, we could nickel and dime it till we're blue in the face. I agree with Eugene and Bill in that, we gotta move the process forward, which means we're, adopting the first reading basically today, correct? Is that, we're gonna vote, we're gonna introduce, not adopt, we're not adopting, we're not voting on that introduction.
We vote on the introduction.
Vote on the introduction. Statutorily, you're required to introduce it, and then unless you waive your rules, you cannot adopt it today, so it's only an introduction. Okay, all right.
And then I think had a couple clarifying points.
Just two clarifying points. Ryan, to your point about the, anybody getting locked in, part of what you will potentially be adopting is the maintenance plan for how you might shift a job from one tier to another tier. So there's a whole process for how, that would be a good example, because it talks about in the maintenance plan about how if somebody's job, the requirements or whatever that feeds into it changes completely or drastically, there's a process for reevaluating the tier that they're in and then moving them up or down depending on whatever those changes were. So just a comment on that. It's the job classification and compensation maintenance plan in your packet.
Is that the one we pay annually, sign up for?
We pay per hour.
Per hour, okay.
Yeah.
No.
The maintenance-
This is the plan that the county would be adopting. It's the format for how you would go about systematically in the future making those changes. It's the framework. So it's, if this applies, this is the process we follow. We go through these steps, we talk with these people, we reevaluate using the rubrics, and then, depending on the points and everything, okay, now we move them up or we move them down.
And that's the 2024-016. which will be next.
This has nothing to do, as far as I understand, with paying any outside firm anything. This is a part of the package that they provided as a part of how you will maintain the system moving forward. Yeah, just to clarify that though, Ben, and this is something I pointed out during our finance conversation, which was like on page 4 of that, in step 4, it says, if requested by the committee, the council's professional human resources consultants may conduct an assessment, including but not limited to the following: reviewing the department plan, evaluating the evaluation points for the position, considering the impact of the classification, suggesting alternative methods, and then an assessment report will be prepared by that consultant and submitted to the human resources director to the job classification compensation committee for evaluation. It's that step that insinuates that in order for us to do that, we go through them to get it. I don't think we have to, in my opinion, but that's the insinuation in the plan currently. I just wanted to point out there's a procedure built in, there's a procedure for changes, so nobody's technically ever locked into anything. Yeah. And I think that's when we say that they're pushing, they're really just saying adopt it, you have this plan in place, then you can follow these rules or this plan to change, things as you go or need to. My second point of, I don't know if clarification is the right word, just, it was based on a conversation that we had at the special meeting with the consultants about the liability piece. There is the part in terms of potential federal liability if we're not in compliance with salaried employees, et cetera. Their other concern was just that there would be the potential for litigation by what they were, I think, referring to as picking and choosing individuals' compensation levels, as opposed to looking at them in these categories, because they were worried about you having employees who, not literally down to every detail, but across the spectrum, are basically doing the same work for different departments, but are receiving different compensation levels, and that was one of the things that they expressed could lead to litigation. So I just wanted to point out, it wasn't just the salaried, non-salaried employee component, it was also that if you're treating people who have essentially the same job duties differently in terms of their salary, they were worried that that was going to create potential liability. I just wanted to point that out since you talked about it. Yeah. And in the corporate setting or in a typical business setting, the justification for a difference in that particular tier would be some criteria. It would be a length of service. It would be a performance evaluation yearly. It would be well, no, I mean, the skills, I think, are classifying it, but it's actually physically has to have a justification. Of some sort.
Certificate for, your CDL or,
Whatever, should say extra stuff. I mean, I don't know if there's been performance reviews in this county departments. Whenever, I don't know if we hold performance reviews, obviously we should be most likely, but, those justifications exist. So then am I wrong in saying that we're adopting, in essence, a baseline that is used per category, per classification grouping? If we're maintaining that, we're minimizing our potential for.
Correct. I mean, that was my understanding based on the conversation as well, is that you're establishing baselines. But again, I think that was their point, is that you need to have people who have similar job duties, and job functions into similar baselines, as opposed to picking and choosing based on whatever the criteria are at budget season, that just happens to make a difference between two people that are essentially doing the same work.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be like every private job in this county has that? Like, she kept using a word that I despise. She kept saying equity, financial equity. And the truth is, you can have two people doing the same exact job with the same exact job responsibilities, and one of them is just better than the other. So that person makes more. So I don't sign off on the fact that just because they're doing the same job and the same duties, that they earn the same pay. That's why.
We're not talking about any of the salary aspect of it right now.
The job description is what he was talking about.
But there will be people who make more in certain doing the same job if they have other
So are we,
longevity or anything else, but
so we have a motion to
introduce.
the first reading.
Yep.
I would agree with Eugene, that, or you guys, that, we should
Correct.
gather as much information as we can from anybody, concerns otherwise. And then, determine how we wanna move forward after that.
And I think those concerns need to be brought to the full council. Councilman Webb indicated he's been contacted by several people. I've heard nothing from anyone. So I need to have that information before I can make a judgment.
And the reason, I actually took the digital version and I posted it on, because I had a lot of people said they hadn't seen it, so that's probably why I haven't specifically reached out to.
All right, well,
But not the job descriptions, that was just the financial.
The study, yes, yes.
Everything's available, Pam, correct? You can make anything available, correct?
Whatever you sent me is what I put out. I can't remember the job description, it was just in there.
PDFs of the
Okay.
classifications. But I got the job descriptions from Pam on Thursday. There's a lot, and put on a thumb drive, so it's not
Yeah,
something you
I
can
think
just
that was
easily,
email out with,
I can do that.
okay,
I did want to make a comment though.
Okay.
I want to get this on record. Because Matt, I agree with you on the 16,000. I hadn't opened my email yet this morning to read that email. They're just wonderful to work with, and it's easy for us to go over there and do that. But we do have 3 people in our office. We're going to have a committee. And if someone wants to know, I'm willing to do that. I've done that. So if we could get them on retainer, that if I have a problem, I could call and ask them. But we can do that in our office.
And to the point that's been reiterated, that's been said before, if we don't use them, they won't charge us.
Correct.
They're just saying for budget purposes, budget 16,000 for it.
Yeah.
That's an average.
that's the high end, that's the highest end of their average for the first year of helping with
If we
maintaining
don't,
this.
if we don't use it, that's, don't
Right.
have to use it. We
Right.
have to use Pam instead.
President Piper,
Yes,
we
sir.
don't currently have any county employees who are covered under a collective bargaining agreement, do we?
I don't think
I
we
think
do
we
any
do,
longer.
Because once the union was dissolved, that was the last bit, right, for the sheriff's deputies? Okay, somebody had asked if there's anything that, any jobs under the collective bargaining agreement, if this would affect that, but I didn't think we had any.
I believe so. Let's go ahead and do roll call on the introduction of ordinance 2024-015.
Mr. Flanagan, I will read to the introduction.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
I say no.
Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz. Yes. Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right, and then I'll get with Pam, I'll send you a list of all those things that we'd like for the department heads to get back to you with, and then if you could just share that with us, that'd be great. And then, so moving on to the job classification ordinance, first reading, 2024-016, this is just a motion to introduce.
Motion to introduce.
Motion by Ryan, second by Dan. No, this is pretty much going hand in hand with that first ordinance. Do we have any additional discussion on this portion? Hearing none, roll call please on the introduction of 2024-016.
Mr. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
No.
Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Ms. Piper.
Yes. And we have on here tax abatement guidelines resolution 2024-012, but I was looking through my packet and I
Can't
don't
find mine.
see it.
Bill had emailed it.
Yeah, we have it. We were all emailed a copy of it from Ben on 6/20 at 11:42.
Okay, kind of have copies made and then come back.
We could do
later
that.
in the agenda.
Yes.
Hey, when you're making those, could you make the copies of the code of conduct as well? I don't have that either.
All right, so we will come back to the tax abatement resolution. Moving on to appointments and committee reports. I did talk to Councilman Whitehead yesterday, and you did not receive any feedback or,
I had no comments, no questions, no concerns on the code of conduct over the last month.
What are we talking about?
the code of conduct that we
I thought you
discussed.
said board committee appointments.
I said appointments and committee reports.
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Eugene, I apologize. I meant to get with you on that, but failed to do so. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, I was hoping, Tanya's about to bring up copies of it, 'cause I didn't have it either. I thought I had it in my bag.
We have a resolution if we choose to do so. That is in your packet.
Motion to adopt.
Second,
Motion to adopt resolution 2024-013 from Bill with a second by Dan. Opens up. Do we have any comments?
Yeah, I have some comments. Well, I was hoping to get copies for when Tanya got back, cause I don't have it with me, but, there's,
You have it in your email.
yeah, that's,
That we,
you gotta understand, I got hacked by a bunch of radical leftists a couple months ago, so I get about 300 emails a day. They sign me up for emails all day long, so that's buried in there, so I don't have it, with me right now, but, I'll just speak off my memory.
so Jim has this from what we got last
Thank
month.
you, Mr. Chair. I would say that the majority of this, obviously we can sign off on and everybody could agree. There was one thing that, I was gonna object to, which would be, number 3, the conduct of members, the professional and personal conduct of members and appointees must be above reproach and avoid even the appearance of impropriety. We can all agree to that, right? Members and appointees shall refrain from rudeness, disrespectful comments, insults, name calling, abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks upon the character and motives of other members of council or other appointees, county personnel, or the public. For me, I object to that whole second, part of that paragraph just because it's so subjective. There's plenty of things that people find, offensive that others may not find offensive. Some people speak about things that others don't choose to speak about. Number one, I would never agree to sign over my rights to be able to voice my opinion and on something. If I feel a certain way, I'm gonna speak about it. You know, and some people may just find the very speaking of it as rude or inappropriate or an attack upon someone's character. So, other than everything else, I kind of object to number 3. The other thing, and this is just a hypothetical, but for example, we're talking about it's so subjective. Would it be a violation of a code of conduct or not? You know, and if we're doing like a hypothetical, for example, I don't see it anywhere in here, but like if we had a secret closed door meeting off the record, to make decisions, and not everyone was in attendance, that would be considered kind of a code of conduct violation, but that's not anywhere in here. That's a violation of the closed door. Well, yeah, I agree. It's not in here. The other one would be like a hypothetical, for example, if one of us had like a family member, you know, bid on a project, and we awarded that project, you know, use taxpayer funds to do a county government project, and we didn't disclose that conflict of interest. I think that would be a code of conduct violation, but that's not in here.
number 2 covers both of those.
Say again, sir.
Number 2 covers both of those.
Okay. Well,
Open processes of government and conflicts of interest are both cited in there.
okay. Well, good, because the two examples I've given actually happened. There was a meeting off the books, off the record that the state access counselor spoke about. There was, a, relative who was awarded a contract and it wasn't disclosed. So those are things that actually happened, that nothing was said or done about. So it's hard for me to,
Contract wasn't with the county council.
I understand that,
It's for us.
but you know what I'm talking about. I mean, in a hypothetical world. So anyway, that's it. Not only would I not agree to the number 3, I wouldn't abide by it either. I can agree to everything else, but I'm not gonna silence my opinion or anything, on something if I feel passionate about it, so that's all I have to say about it.
Well, number three is, if you object, you're allowed to, obviously, but do it in a polite manner. And now you and I have rejected each other more than once, but I've never called you illuminated, you've never called me illuminated. Oh, that's right, you didn't say it out loud, absolutely. Well, and that's what we're after, just to be respectful.
That goes without saying, but the way this is worded, this is worded to silence free speech outside of these chambers, and I would never agree to that. In here, I can agree to, we're all professional in here, we can all agree to that, but, sometimes we have spirited debates with people, sometimes people get their feelings hurt, sometimes people think that's rude, and I would never forfeit my right to be able to participate in that conversation.
I'm not saying to forfeit your right to participate, it's just the manner in which you do it.
Well, again, that goes back to
Any of
the
us.
subjectiveness of this, like I said, what some might find offensive or rude, others might find just telling the truth.
Can I ask a question? Relative to overlap with the employee handbook, do elected officials fall under the employee handbook?
Because there are policies in place there that elected officials, you should adhere to it, to be polite and follow the guidelines that your employees have to follow.
Yeah, because there's a lot of overlap with this and the.
But
what's in
we
the
don't have
handbook.
anything specific to this body or any other elected official. And this is just for this body up here. Anyone from the committee have anything?
To me, the overarching theory behind this is that we, as members of the council, represent the council both when we're sitting in this room and 24 hours a day. So our conduct, the way in which we express ourselves, reflects back on this council. And I think it's important that we have standards. Maybe these aren't perfect, and maybe there could be changes, which we can do over time as we maybe learn more. But I think having some set of standards is better than having nothing at all, which is where we are now.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Can't you talk about maybe what was you concerned about?
No, I was asking about the handbook.
Yeah.
My concern is that this is not necessary, to be honest with you. I think that as elected officials, yes, you are held to a higher standard that the voters decide if you're not acting in the best interest of what they've, instilled with you to vote for you. So to me, it's unnecessary, but that's my personal opinion.
I'll take it a step further. I not only do I think it's unnecessary, I think it's just kind of a little bit of pandering to make it look like we're doing something. There's really no authority in it. There's that the voters make the ultimate choice. When you're elected, you're elected. We're not a recall state. You can't be recalled. There's no teeth to it. It's nothing but a feel good moment to make some people feel like there's some reaction to an action. And for that reason alone, it's just a piece of paper.
Was there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Yep, we had a motion by Bill and a second by Dan, so if we have no further discussion, roll call please.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Ms. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
No.
Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Cantz. No. Ms. Piper.
Yes. Great, thank you. Tanya's not back yet, so we'll move over to board appointments. We have two boards that we are appointing members to today. We have the four that we discussed last month that are seeking reappointment. And then we did have a few individuals who reached out with interest into participating in these boards. You should have all received those emails and emails from both directors asking for their current appointments to be reappointed. So we will start with the Muncie Public Library. Thank you.
President Piper,
Yes,
if I may real fast, I
Yes.
would like to, I'd like to make a motion to table this until our next meeting. So I understand that we have a couple people who have submitted interest. We had posted, unfortunately, I think our rule states, our council rule states that when we do board and committee appointments, we have to make the public available, make them aware of the board and committee appointments. I believe it's either 1 or 2 months prior to us actually making those appointments. It's supposed to include the seats that are open, the descriptions and qualifications for those. I don't believe the position was posted publicly until Thursday, and I don't believe it included any of the descriptions or qualifications. So for that reason, I would move that we table this to next month to give everyone a fair opportunity to submit their name for consideration who want to.
I know we did discuss them publicly in the meeting last month. And it was shared on social media with the dates and times. I mean,
But not till Thursday.
no, it wasn't
Supposed to be-
Thursday.
Supposed to be a month before. That's the council rules.
So look. Now, both of these, I wanna make sure I'm correct on this, then if we do not appoint, then these boards will go without board members for their first meetings. And the current,
Correct.
No,
the current board members stay.
They stay until we appoint.
Generally speaking, excuse me, unless there was a statute or ordinance that said otherwise, the currently appointed members would continue to serve until replaced. Yes.
Ryan, is that a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a second for Ryan's motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Do we have the dates so we know whether or not it was or wasn't?
Well, I was just looking at that, so the Civic Center is August, or July 31st, August 1st, so I do think we have that. We have some, we have one.
Mhm.
But the Muncie one is 6/1, the library, excuse me. So we would be delaying that library one.
I mean, regarding, they was posted 5 days ago in Delaware County government. 5 days ago. Based off the rules, what does it say for sure we have to have posted and? Let me double, it's at least a month, maybe 2 months.
Did you get a copy?
Yes, Mr. Hughes sent it to me.
It's on the county website. You know, it's actually like starred. You can find it really quickly. Now I know our website.
Not later than the regular October meeting of the council, the county auditor shall compile a listing of all positions on such boards and commissions which are scheduled to become vacant as of January 1 the following year.
And then it says any other board or committee appointments that don't fall on January 1st, follow the same process.
It's 505, yes. Yeah, appointments to positions that have a different starting date shall be made in the same manner with the dates for publicizing the openings, submitting applications, and making the appointments adjusted accordingly.
We're publicized. We did them in a public meeting.
I don't think that's really the spirit of
Well, I mean,
what it entails.
yeah. But it was made public.
I would agree, I think we have to probably do a better job of, and then, I mean, in all transparency, I think Ryan was calling it the wrong thing. I've been it for a while too, so.
I didn't even know that till this morning.
You know,
I didn't even know it.
yeah,
It's really how this person does it.
right, I suppose there's some justification for that.
They're gonna creep up on us.
Yeah, those words that don't fall in January.
Exactly, yeah, because it's not like we got any notification. Our database is not, that's looking at it, it's not very,
User friendly.
Based off the council, based off the council rules, the way I've just read it, for January appointments, we have to bring it up in October to vote on it in December. So that'd be 2 prior meetings. And what I'm hearing is we made the announcement for last meeting,
mhm.
so then it should be our next meeting, which would be 2 meetings later is when we should vote on it.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
If it's a like matter, you are correct.
Based off that, I'm gonna support tabling it.
All right, roll call on the table.
And
Yes.
Well, we got roll call.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes, he was looking at
Mr. Mokel.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz.
Yes.
Piper.
Yes.
And just for clarification, could we include the description of those boards and the,
If I can get them.
agenda?
We don't have that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that information. That's not on our database, so.
I guess the best way would be whoever's on it can maybe please give a description of what
Yeah.
entails.
We did receive the letter from, the two board directors, the directors of those organizations, and I have,
And obviously qualifications necessary, where they have to be of a party or in,
I don't believe we have that with the,
well, just if
the
that's,
library. So what we received from the director of the library, the Delaware County Council makes 2 appointments to the Muncie Public Library Board of Trustees. Current Muncie Public Library Board of Trustees members are appointed by the Delaware County Council. Olin Dotson and Billy Shepherd have expressed interest in continuing their service for another 4-year term beginning Saturday, June 1st, 2024. Olin Dotson is completing a term that was vacated. He serves on the House and Finance Committee and is knowledgeable of architecture, has proven invaluable for the Muncie Public Library with the restoration work of our Carnegie Library. In addition, Olin has been elected to the Board of Directors of Indiana Landmarks. Billy Shepherd is in her first 4-year term and serves as the chair of the House and Finance Committee. Billy is also a past president of our Board of Trustees. Olin Dotson and Billy Shepherd are active community leaders and with strong commitments to the Muncie Public Library and its mission to provide accessible and innovative services for our community. It is our request that the Delaware County Council approve their reappointments to the Muncie Public Library Board of Trustees for an additional term. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. And thank you for your time and consideration is what we received. So they don't really list what goes on, what they're looking for necessarily there. And then we have the other email that we received, from Joanne McKinney, the director of the, Convention Center, Delaware County Council. I am writing you to let you know you have 2 upcoming appointments to the Delaware County Civic Center Authority Board. The authority who oversees the food and beverage tax in Delaware County, which is a dedicated tax for the bond, capital purchasing, and a portion of the operations of the Horizon Convention Center. The 2 whose terms are ending July 31st are Jessica Piper, President, and Marianne Cradaville, Treasurer. Both have served as officers, are signers on the bank account, and have shown great interest in the Horizon Convention Center and building economic development in Muncie and Delaware County. Our staff and I have enjoyed working with both professionals and would very much like them to continue doing the great work at the Civic Center Authority. And then she says, I have attached a list of the full board of names, addresses, phone numbers, terms, and party affiliations if you have any further questions. Yeah, it's a Word document.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't get an email from her.
And it went to our info,
Did anyone else get that
our
letter?
county council, DIST,
Jessica sent it to me, yes, you texted it because you were having problems emailing it, so I got it through a text.
that was the library letter.
Okay,
Do you not get,
I only got that one,
Yeah, I didn't see it.
did you get the other people who applied for the other boards?
just when you
Dennis
sent it to me
Everett,
this morning.
Jessica Shrout, and Amber Green, you never got their messages?
No, ma'am.
I didn't either.
Yeah, that's another issue then. Okay. Well, we got the roll call on that, so I'll make a note for the, distribution list. It was my understanding we were all on that distribution list. Okay,
We're gonna backtrack here real quick.
so now let's backtrack to the Tax Abatement Guidelines Resolution 2024-012.
The actual resolution is stapled to the back of the guidelines. Motion to approve the resolution. Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Dan. Do we have any questions on?
You wanna quickly, Bill, just talk about the changes you made?
well, yeah, a couple of items. The genesis of this was the 2 recent, tax abatements that were granted by the council, one for Meadow Forge and one for Kaleidoscope Kids. And in both cases, there were significant questions, and we pointed out that the council had never adopted any guidelines as to how tax abatement would be viewed, when an application is made. I worked with, our economic development director and the two members of the tax abatement committee. Also, no pride of authorship, looked at other jurisdictions and how they, what type of guidelines they had. They ranged everything from maybe one page to a whole booklet, full of information. I chose not to include in here all the requirements of state statute. Those are published. We just have simply a statement that the investment has to qualify under Indiana state law. We can't deviate from that. Probably the two most significant aspects of this, other than the 10 criteria that are listed. First is in the third paragraph, the bold type. We're proposing that one of our guidelines be that the application has to be filed prior to filing for a building permit if it involves real estate improvements, or prior to the execution of a binding purchase order if it involves equipment. That was a discussion that we had in Kaleidoscope Kids. Had this guideline been in place, they would not have qualified. The second item was something that after discussion with the finance committee was added. That's the last paragraph, and this pertains more toward the issues that arose with Meadow Forge, and that is, when it comes to the county council and there's going to be a public hearing, we're going to require that the applicant notify every adjoining landowner that there's going to be a public hearing. They will receive a copy of the same notice that is published. And at first I thought, well, this really only pertained to real estate, but I think it should pertain to all tax abatements. So if it even involves purchase of a new piece of equipment in an existing factory, I think they still should receive notice. So I think that opens the process up considerably. The 10 criteria, I will admit, are pretty conservative. I guess the statement I made is we don't want to be handing out tax abatements like candy. Tax abatements should be an incentive, and it should be something that benefits the community, either by job creation, certainly increasing tax base. We should, in my judgment, emphasize the ability to incentivize existing businesses, locally owned businesses, to bring in new equipment or to take on a new project. We want to look at the level of wages and benefits that are offered. We want to look at environmental impacts. We want to look at infrastructure that might be required. We don't want tax abatement to be used to gain an unfair competitive advantage. That's not the purpose of it. And we want applicants to furnish information. I think sometimes in the past, we haven't known all of the financial data that we should have had to determine whether tax abatement was appropriate. So that was the thinking behind it, and I appreciate the work that the committee did, and also the suggestions that were made to improve it. So that's my report.
I think this is a great bill. Thank you for getting this done.
It's hard to believe we didn't have anything on file. Good job.
Any further questions for Bill or any comments?
Well, just a quick comment. I'm I hated to vote against the Kaleidoscope Kids last tax abatement last month because I feel like it's an important service to the community, important business. It's needed,
So I'm glad, I'm really thankful that we have something in place now that will help avoid anything in the future like that from happening. So kudos,
I do have
to
one,
Billy and the committee.
I do one point of clarity, Bill. So regardless of the guidelines, there is nothing preventing us from, suspending or approving an abatement even around these guidelines theoretically, correct?
Correct. As it states in there, granting of tax abatement is within the sole discretion of the council.
But don't come to
I,
the
I
table
would,
with
I would suggest that if an issue arose, that we ought to amend the guidelines before we just simply ignore them.
Thanks.
All right, roll call please.
Flanagan.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Ruckel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz. Yes. Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right, moving on. Don't believe we have any old business. New business, today we have Ryan Kelly with TWG to give us a presentation on a pilot program. I know I think he's attempted to reach out to all of us and had some at-length conversations with many of us. So, welcome Ryan, and,
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Do you have the PowerPoint to share? Do you just want me to kind of run through that? I didn't know if you.
They did present it in the packet here.
it's right here.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. So today I want to present a project, located at 4500 South Callan Road. And so a little bit of background on TWG. We're located in Indianapolis, Indiana. We're active in about 20 states. I run our tax credit team. So we're top 5 in the country the last couple of years across the country. So as far west as Washington, as far east as Georgia. So the bulk of our projects are here in the Midwest. We're one of the leaders in Indiana. So we roughly have developed over $1 billion of real estate on the affordable housing side of things, workforce housing, attainable housing. We do have a market rate division that's separate from what I do. And so we're leveraging the state tax credits as well as the federal tax credits to kind of create housing stock across the country. So we're vertically integrated, so we have a management team, so we're managing our affordable projects long term. We own the construction company, the design team, and we manage these long term for a lot of different reasons, but obviously maintaining the asset itself, making sure the proper people are qualified, and we're within compliance with the program. So it's a very complicated program, and so we have felt it's worthwhile to make sure we kind of own that asset long term. So quick update on the rental housing tax credits. It was created in 1986. It's basically a tax credit that's awarded to developers, and you monetize those with banks to essentially bring down the permanent debt. What that allows us to do is actually restrict rents and incomes for the tenants living there. So the intention on this project is it's for people at 60% AMI, which fluctuates every year based upon HUD guidelines. So right now that window for income is roughly $35,000 to $50,000 a year would qualify you to live here. We also have a tenant selection plan. So you say, all right, is this free housing? It is not free housing. So it's still paid rent, and it's basically reduced rent. And so in this case, we anticipate the rents are likely between $900 and $1,100 a month for 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, depending on the household size. So those are the two dynamics: is it's income restricted and rent restricted for that. So some have asked, well, why have you picked this location? The state's program is super competitive. They have a complex scoring system. So one of the things that's necessary is local incentive. And so what they have said is to get the maximized points for the program, you have to solicit 10% of the project in local funds. That allows us to get 4 points. So typically the scoring system, a half point can make a difference on whether the project gets awarded the federal and state tax credits. Last year was the first year that there was a state tax credit for affordable housing. The state ICDA actually allocates those through a competitive program. We were fortunate enough to get 2 of the 5 tax credit awards in the state of Indiana last year. One of those is here in Muncie at the old end zone property in Kilgore that's breaking ground this month. And it's separated geographically. So Delaware County will compete in the Northeast region. There's a map in your packet as well. So you're competing against Fort Wayne, South Bend, and there will likely be 1 tax credit award in that property. So super competitive. And so the presentation here is to make it the most competitive it can be, which is to try to get those local incentives. The other aspects of the scoring are things we either control via site, what things we do for amenities. I think as we look at the site, you hit on, hey, this is job creation. We will have 2 to 3 on-site staff on the property, but it's roughly a $28 to $30 million project. So that will be using construction. We typically try to use local workers to the extent we can, and so it's publicized locally. We do have a minority commitment we've made to subcontractors through the state, so that's a 15% commitment on XBE subcontractors. And so we'll go through this process. The urgency is the application's due July 28th, and the awards will come out in November. So the request today is for a commitment of the pilot. The pilot is a new program that has allowed for affordable housing projects the last couple of years. So it may be new to this council. The city of Indianapolis has done it, the city of Fort Wayne, and now the city of Muncie. Why that's attractive is our commitment to affordability is a 15-year initial compliance period. So what the program does is previously abatements were 10 years. It could be a sliding scale and then it could be a commitment. This kind of aligns the compliance program with the pilot, that both of those are 15 years. So the request is we're showing the state the monetized value of the incentive based upon what's paid. So the request is that we would pay $30,000 annually in a pilot. That would increase 3% a year. So roughly $530,000 of commitment of tax proceeds to the county. And then after year 15, that would reset the full tax amounts there. Amenity wise, I think as we look at the employer tax base, we've been funded from Amazon and different folks like that on the employer side. The biggest thing we hear is in order to create jobs, we want to know people we have working there. That obviously became more apparent during COVID. And so I think the walkability to employers is huge here. There's a trail that goes across the property. It's adjacent to the United States Postal Service right there. It's an old church property that started construction, and they have not completed that project. So right now it would be considered an exempt property. So I think the pitch would be this is going from a non-payable property to a paid property, but also creating a workforce for those employers. So I mean, the Canpax there, Magna, Midwest Metal, and several others. So I think we see that trails being a walkability to the employers, which is huge for our tenant base. So happy to answer questions. One other thing that did come up from a couple of you guys is the environmental concerns, as this is an industrial area. So the church has had an environmental report done that came back clean. They did a geotech, obviously, to start construction. As part of our application process, we actually do a new phase 1 ourselves. And so that will all be vetted before that July 28th date. We also have a market study, so we have roughly $50,000 of third-party cost vetting these things for our presentation for the state. So that's our commitment up front to the deals to do those market studies. Is there a supply and demand? And so I think I shared maybe that market study for another property with Matt. There's a huge demand in Muncie. We also built Riverbend Flats, which is the old marsh site in Burlington. It filled up in 2.5 months. So there's a huge demand in Muncie, and I think in this workforce corridor is a big piece of that. So happy to answer questions on any of those topics.
Just a couple clarity things, Ryan, just to be clear. So this is the pilot program here is state driven. We're competing against Fort Wayne and some of the other potentially the northeastern counties. We make a recommendation, or we're offering a letter of support to you to apply for that in that end of July timeframe. We may or may not get it correctly.
We will find out in November if we get the award. So once the award happens, there's really no turning back. And so at that point, we basically come back to the council for the actual resolution, the actual pilot agreement. And the terms are just kind of set at that point, but obviously will be voted on at that point for the actual pilot agreement, the commitments made at that point. So the request now is just this letter of support, and the two commitments or I guess statements that have to be made for the state application for points are what are the length of the pilot and what is the monetized value. So I think there were some questions on the language. Those two things have to exist in order to score. And so those two things in that letter are supported there.
So basically, a letter of support from us that you can then take to the state and say they're gonna back the project if it's awarded to us.
Exactly.
So we're just.
So the month. Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay. I was just saying basically it's just
a heads up to them that, hey, we got the, not quite the green light yet, but a letter of support if you award it to us,
Exactly,
correct?
yes, exactly right. And they wanna know what is the value of that, cause it can be in the form of cash, it can be in the form of monetized incentives. They're combining all that for that scoring system. So in this case, the request is just support for the pilot, which would, I think, qualifies for the full 4 points.
Where is that document that just says we're in support of?
This letter
The
right
letter,
here.
that's just the letter. This letter, yeah, that's, yeah.
So for the application, that letter is all that's all that's needed, I think, to support the scoring.
I'd like to, just, for everyone's knowledge, I have, full disclosure here, I have no vested interest as a realtor in your project. And so I just want everybody to know, however I vote, however your project ends up, you've not come for me, I've not represented you, and I have no, monetary, gains in this project. I'm also questioning, you and I talked earlier, if I got the right one. Yeah, okay, I don't know that it's the same. Yeah, that was changed to what was from previous, which was something else. Okay, well, it still says in the second, I objected to this up front. When you and I talked earlier, you indicated that the council has no monetary investment in this project. You're just looking for our support. But the second paragraph still reads, the Delaware County Council commits an estimated monetized value of $2,685,000 in resources, which are the tax credits.
So those resources are the monetized value of the pilot. So for example, if a fully assessed property, the full taxes would be, I'm making numbers up, $100,000, and the commitment is we're gonna pay 30. That net difference is what we're showing to the state of the value of that. So there is no cash outlay request of council. It's the pilot's value over that 15-year period is what we have to show the state, because they're wanting that 10% piece. But there's no commitment for a cash injection. It's just how are we valuing monetizing that pilot?
I guess when you put in resources, that doesn't sit well with me. I will,
And I thought they revised that to say the monetized value of the pilot. Is that the way it was read?
the Delaware County Council commits an estimated monetized value of $2,684,000 in resources to the development, which is a change from commits a total of $2,685,000 in resources to the development. So it's basically just saying it's a monetized value. The clarity is the difference between, you're paying $30,000 a year back to us.
Right.
Currently, it's a nonprofit church that pays zero to us. The value of the property will be, like you said, maybe it's 100,000. So that's $70,000 difference times 15 years equals $2,685,000.
Yeah, so we also show the calculation of which is in their packet. It basically shows that 30,000 increasing 3% a year. We take that total, which is roughly 537,000. And then we say, if this was fully assessed and built, what is that value for the 15-year period increasing 3% annually? And the net difference is that 2 point something million dollars. So, Mr. Mogul, if you have concern with that language, I think it'd be fine to revise that to say in monetized value of the pilot agreement. I think that would be, it doesn't have to say resources if there's some confusion there.
I think that sounds better. I'll defer to Mr. Freeman or Mr. Hughes for their comments in regards to. It's fine to say, this is our intent, but if I'm gonna be signing a document, I want personally to feel like how it reads is how it's explained, or how it's explained is how it reads.
Yeah, so if there's confusion on whether that's monetary cash injection, I think if you guys want to clarify that and say this is the monetized value of the pilot agreement, that would be perfectly acceptable to the state, to be included in the letter and still qualify for the points.
I think that would be a good clarification, because that's exactly what it is. It's taxes that we are going to forego. We wouldn't collect them anyway unless the project is built, so I think reference to the pilot agreement makes sense to me.
And Councilmember Cantz
first contacted me and was explaining the project to me. I haven't had a chance to speak with you, but I did speak with Matt. And first thing I heard was 15 years tax credit, and I kind of got a little concerned, but then he pointed out that it's currently tax exempt. It's a church, we're not getting nothing. So, for anybody who's listening to this and you hear that, wow, 15 years with nothing, we're not getting anything anyway. So in 15 years, we're gonna have, um, a very much, or a much needed building for, affordable housing on the south side of town. That's something that's, always in need, development on that side of town. And you mentioned that sidewalk, right? A lot of people call that the sidewalk to nowhere. I'm glad to see that there'll be something built, next to it, but it's not really a sidewalk to nowhere. What a lot of people don't realize is that, the state has the metrics and people who need assistance and how to go about filing for that assistance, whether it be, unemployment, government assistance, and they track that on ability to reach those resources. And for whatever reason, the neighborhood to the north of that sidewalk is kind of towards the bottom end of the state and understanding how to get resources. So the idea of building that sidewalk was, okay, well, if you're not sure how to get the resources, we'll pave you a path to where the jobs are. And that's the idea of why that sidewalk goes to those, industrial areas. So for you guys to build housing near that, it can kind of, go along with that. That links up to a lot of areas down there and the convenience store down the road and everything. And I think for me, I like the project and I would love to offer my letter of support and sign off on it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, we hit on services a bit too, as part of our package of state, we also are provided core certification, which is a service piece of the commitment of the infrastructure. So the building is one of those things, job creation, job training, we have services that kind of combine with those tenants and say, hey, if you're struggling with filing your tax return or whatever the issues are, we have a service piece of that equation too. So I always say I'm good at the finance and the building side of that. And then we kind of have a contract with service providers to really supplement those pieces to make sure they're getting to those employers. Transportation's a part of that. There's a lot of mechanisms that are help, if you're making 50 grand a year to have some of the services you need to connect to jobs and be trained. So,
One other thing I want to bring up, you had mentioned about there was some concern from Commissioner King briefly when I talked to him. Obviously Cowan Road is, an industrial area. This parcel of land's 5 acres. It's currently not on the tax rolls. The county has passed buying it, I believe, already once, because of the cost that they're asking for that piece of land. Obviously, that's not a concern to TWG, but that is there. It also sits in a TIF district, which I would recommend that we try to get with the Commissioners Economic Development about removing those 5 acres out of TIF, so that in 15 years, when it goes back on the tax rolls, it actually comes back to us in that regard. I do think that housing component is not it should not be focused, doesn't belong in a TIF, in my opinion, but I think we'll have to deal with that downstream, but just for whatever word, I want to publicly state that I think that 5 acres should be removed, out of that TIF district somewhere here after.
I totally agree with that. Absolutely.
I think it once this project gets off the ground, it could even spur more development that way. I mean, currently it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. You get some housing out there, who knows? Maybe there's a gas station that shows up and a few other things. And that's the way it starts. So
Yeah, you're right. Retail, they want rooftops. So I think this is the first piece of the equation. Obviously, we can't control what comes after, but I would say typically what we see is if you're providing 100 to 120 units, you typically see infrastructure come around that. Again, the hardest part for us is typically creating those jobs. The jobs are there, we're providing the people for that. So I think the combination of the jobs, the people, it would have to attract, or you would think it would have to attract some retail, gas stations, some different things, because you're gonna have people there, right? That need those different services. So I think that equation is there. The housing's a component that's a big piece of this. Retail wants to know people are living there. So, probably roughly 120 is what we're modeling right now. And that's a good point because this will go through planning and zoning. It is an industrial park zoning, but multifamily is an allowed use in that area. We also looked at the comprehensive plan for Delaware County, and it seemed like that target area had some residential motivation as well. So that will be final design, obviously, with civil groups. All those kind of come after that November date.
we'll do an initial massing to say, hey, what's the parking ratio and how many units we fit. We're thinking about 120 currently. It may shift by 10 or 15 units, but that's kind of the estimate.
So if everyone's okay, let me read this change. The Delaware County Council commits an estimated $2,685,000 in monetized value to the pilot program for this development, period.
I'm fine with it.
Council?
Pilot agreement.
Me, council, not you. Pilot agreement, yes, you're right, pilot agreement.
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel. I'm fine with the change. To Bill's point, I think any clarification is good, but again, this is, the overall, I guess, funding mechanism, if you want to call it that, is not entirely dissimilar from a tax abatement in that it's not, it's not actually, the council's not writing a check. That $2,685,000.
Incoming funds.
Well, I wouldn't even agree with that
Not even that.
characterization.
Yeah, that's
The funds
true.
don't exist
Right,
unless
yeah.
the plan
The value he's getting.
forward. But just to be clear, it is not, the county is not spending money. It would be more correct to say the county is willing to contribute in a plan where they would be giving up money, potential tax revenue, but even that's a little fuzzy because if you don't do the project, there would be no money to collect in the first place. But I'm fine with that proposed
So
change.
is it safe to say that it's the value that they are getting?
It's the value that they're getting and that they wouldn't have to pay those property taxes, so they could reallocate the money that would otherwise go to property taxes to the building or financing or whatever else that they intend to do with it to complete that project.
Okay, thank you. And I have two more questions. First of all, will tenants, because this is affordable housing, it's not low income housing, it's affordable housing. Will tenants, apply through your group, to see if they qualify? So it'd be like a basic rental application, and then you guys have the mechanisms, within to determine who qualifies and who doesn't. It wouldn't have anything to do with anyone in county government, right?
Correct. We have an investor and lender in both. When we first move everyone in, those also get certified by a third party we pay for. So we actually have our own compliance team and management team, full application. And there's a tenant selection plan and say, hey, here's a guidance from the state on how you qualify those income and different things like that. That gets done annually when you first move in. You then also recertify those folks every year. So if your income goes up or down, you're recertifying those. Our typical requirement is your income, because we want to make sure they pay rent too, right? So it's not a project-based voucher, we're getting a government check. It's you're paying your rent. And so we want to make sure you can afford that. So we typically certify that they make 3 to 1. So if your, rent's $800, you got to make 3 times that for the month in order to qualify. We have some exceptions in our policy to allow if you have a good credit score, you could go 2 to 1, but that's the exception to the rule. But we have the same obligations. That's fine. We want to charge it. We also want to collect it in order to pay our mortgage. So we're doing all those things. There's another obligation to the tax credit program. If we don't do compliance right, there's a likelihood that we could repay the investor back their tax credits. So if we actually make mistakes, one, we get a black eye across the country. Obviously, we're in 20 states. We don't want to do that. So there's more motivation than just the one property to do things the right way, remain in compliance, and get people to pay rent.
Do you have a financial interest in making sure that everything's above board?
Yes.
And then the other question was, when do you expect people could move in? When would the project be completed?
So we would anticipate awards in November. Closing would likely be June or July of 2025, and that's about a 15-month construction period. So you're looking at end of 2026 completion date roughly.
Thank you.
Management on site. Management's on site, yes. Maintenance is on site. So for 120 units, we would typically have one full-time maintenance supervisor and one full-time property manager. And then we would probably supplement with a part-time leasing agent as well. And then obviously we have corporate office staff on the compliance side that's helping and can supplement as necessary. Obviously part of that's payroll, accounts payable, that's more corporately done. That's not on site. There will be at least 2 people full-time on staff at the property.
Tanya, I emailed the updated language version for us, if somebody can print it off for us.
Okay, I'll run down and print that. Okay, thank you.
The $30,000 figure, where did that come from and who chose that number?
So we're trying to back into those 4 points, and so because it's a 10%, we're trying to calculate what the taxes could be if it was fully assessed. And again, to reiterate, will those actually be paid? We wouldn't do the project and neither would anybody else at the full tax amount because you couldn't pay the mortgage on it. So we're basically looking at what the taxes could be at fully assessed and how to get those 10 points. We basically backed to that math at roughly $30,000. It gets us to that 10% of local leveraging. And the reason being is, again, those resources can be a collective group of pilot cash injection, and we were trying to be sensitive to not requesting cash. So you could technically say, all right, we'll pay $70,000 a year in taxes, but on top of that, we're gonna request, edit funds or whatever funds that could be available. So it's a common, so our thought process was, let's not request cash injection, let's request it in a way that is more palatable to the
Sure,
group.
based off your numbers, you're getting about an 82.5 to 83% savings on your property taxes. And I just heard Councilman Cantz say that there was no issue in purchasing the property, so money doesn't seem to be an issue, especially if I'm hearing the numbers right of 350,000 for the 5 acres. That's $70,000 an acre. As a farmer, when I see that number, I mean, they've got plenty of money to spend, so cash is not a worry to you. So I'm just wondering where that 30,000 number, it seems like what we're getting out of it, especially for over 15 years, that's a pretty long term, in my opinion, to be paid in lieu of taxes, especially a full amount.
Yeah, so I think that's fair. So two things is, what is the value of the land? I would say we closed 15 properties last year. For multifamily zone property, that is really below average. So for context, I would say a 3 to 5 acre parcel for multifamily is typically in the 500 to $1 million range, obviously depending on geographic, but in the Midwest, it's what we're paying typically for a multifamily. But you're exactly right. If we're just buying the farmland, then we're having to rezone it, get the infrastructure. Obviously, you have utilities here that changes the value. So I think we've looked at this property as it's much less than we would typically pay. And the question is, does that matter to you guys? Yes, it does. So it's twofold. It's trying to get the points for the incentive. The other part of the equation is the state underwrites the entire deal. They want to make sure you can pay your mortgage. And so we have to prove to them that we can pay 15% more than the mortgage payment every year. So it's a 1.15 debt coverage ratio. So that factors in, and we actually don't earn credits on the land amount as well. So we don't earn any federal resources on that. So they basically will say, if you pay more than you have to, and we have to get an appraisal on it, that's part of the package as well. We don't have any leftover money. So it's twofold. We can only defer so much of our developer fee. We have to meet the debt coverage ratio. They have minimum operating standards. So they have a whole guideline on just underwriting standards that we're meeting. So I would say perspective is part of that. Of the value of the land is going to be different in agriculture because it is developable.
Well, I realize that because it's also an industrial park, which means you're now taking acreage out that potentially could bring business in. I know 5 acres anymore is very small for what we've been bringing into Delaware County. But you also then leave yourself a little short-sighted on saying, well, you can never develop that for a business.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think, there's also, we looked at a couple of parcels, and there's 80 acres, I think, behind there in farm ground. There's obviously several parcels around there. So I think as we look at that, another scoring perspective is how many other attainable workforce housing deals are in that census tract. And so there's different dynamics to that. So this is one that it was off market. Obviously, the church is no longer developing that. But on those other parcels, they weren't at a price point and for sale that we could shave off 5 acres. Because we also don't want to buy 10 acres we have to maintain if we don't have to. So I agree with what you're saying. I just think in that particular area, there's other land sites that I don't know that you're forfeiting
The committee,
those opportunities.
the county had already sold it to a nonprofit who wasn't going to pay $1. You said the county sold it to the church? I mean, I shouldn't say, I don't know if the county sold it, but it was already allocated to a church that wasn't going to pay taxes. Right, they had purchased it, right. My other question would be, when would you feel like the market would be saturated with this type of housing? Because roughly 3 miles away, you're building the one on Kilgore.
So we do a full market study on every property. And so it's not a rent study on the entire county. It's specific to that property. And so we will do that as part of the state process. Again, they will look at capture rates, how many people, how long will it take to lease up. The other two properties, Kilgore and Riverbend. Riverbend is a little different. It's still the tax credit program, but it's lower incomes. And so that one doesn't compete because it's somewhere 30, 40, 50, 60% AMI. This one will be all 60% AMI. So they're looking at all those dynamics. That report is about 160 pages. So they're looking at all sorts of demographics to say, will this lease up? I think on Kilgore, the projection was it was going to lease up 20 to 25 units a month, which is somewhat unprecedented. Even in Indianapolis, we're leasing up to 15 units a month. So, for perspective, and I can share that full report with you too. From Kilgore, it will be very similar. The new report will also take into account those units in that equation. Or it would be any other things that have been awarded in the state. Obviously, there is no other ones in Delaware County, but if it were to have 2 or 3 other competitors that aren't built yet, they factor those into the absorption rates.
I would say that, just a comment here that, what Councilmember Whitehead had said, just reading some of the comments on social media and stuff, I think we're a long ways away from the market being saturated with affordable housing. I see people commenting all the time about rental rates skyrocketing and these single family homes being bought by out of town corporations and jacking the rent up to $1,200-$1,500. So I think we have a tremendous need for affordable housing. We could probably absorb, many more projects similar to this one before we even scratch the surface of it.
Every chamber, we participated in some kind of economic housing thing. I think Mr. Brand's in the audience. He's on the Muncie Manufacturers Alliance. They all stipulate that the housing need is a detriment to retaining and attracting new workers. So I agree with Ryan very much. Thank you.
I think Mr. Webb, to add to that, I think you said earlier, we have a financial incentive to produce. So we project a 7% vacancy rate across the board on these properties. So not in addition to our market study, there's an investor and lender in all these properties. They do their own market studies because they want to make sure we can support paying that mortgage payment. So if they look at it and say, hey, you're projecting 7%, we think the market's going to show 15%, they're going to take issue with that. So they're going to get, there's checks and balances along the way to make sure that isn't an issue. I don't anticipate being one here. A good question. I think that's fair.
Make a motion to adopt the letter that Tanya just stated in support of the pilot agreement for TWG to submit their application in July. Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Dan. Any further questions? Hearing none, roll call please.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Ms. Mokel.
Yes.
Ms. Webb. Yes. Wyatt.
Yes.
Ms. Cantz.
Yes.
Ms. Piper.
Yes.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll get this signed after the meeting. Make sure we get your copy. Alright. Elected officials and department heads. Do we have anyone that
I
wishes?
have one
Oh.
other
Yeah, go
item
ahead.
of new business if I could.
Yeah, sure.
In your packet, there was a report of the, positions that had been backfilled.
Oh, yes.
And I appreciate this is the format I was looking for. I do want to see which ones are general fund and which ones are come from some other fund, but,
You can tell here if it starts with a 1,000.
okay, well, that's helpful. In any event, this is what replaces the transfers that we have been customarily approving on a very routine basis. It's important that the council have this information on a monthly basis. And I think we ought to get in the habit of receiving the report officially so it becomes part of the minutes. So I would move that we receive the report of the new positions that would have been filled in the last month.
Second.
A motion by Bill, second by Eugene.
If we should have something that stipulates the date, or if you're okay.
Well, we'll have to have a thing on here where we all sign
Oh,
off
yeah.
on it anyway, so that'll all get added.
I have a
Yeah.
quick question about
Yes,
it.
sir.
So, let me borrow this real quick, Mr. Flanagan.
make sure I'm following along correctly. First you have the fund account line, then you have the department, the job title. When you say remaining balance, is that the remaining of balance for the salary for that employee?
That would be, Marissa made this report, so I'll have her answer.
So the one that jumps off the page at me is the last one in the first group is the, department's commissioner, the job title is the mailroom.
Part-time line.
I believe we only got one employee doing that job, like $30,000 part-time line. And you're gonna have multiple people paid out on line.
The commissioners have one part-time line for all their part-time people.
That's a full-time position.
No. If you, for other part-time people, like a part-time, custodian or something, also gets paid out at 70.
Anyone part-time that's under the commissioner's umbrella. Well, that's the person who is currently, the job title that they're hiring for is part-time for the mailroom, which is paid out of the commissioner's budget on a part-time line, but their part-time line is for all of their part-time, anyone underneath the commissioners that's part-time.
So they're, if I'm reading this right, the commissioners are hiring another part-time employee to work in the mailroom?
Replacing.
We don't have just one employee in that department. I need someone when the mailroom full-time person goes on vacation.
We don't see everyone's part-time.
I was saying typically that would not be a transfer. We'd never see it.
I mean, that just up to last year, that position itself was part-time, so I'm surprised that they need another person to do a position that was part-time up until last year.
I agree with,
Oh, come on, Dan.
no, I agree with Bill that if, I mean, this should be like for full-time employees.
There's no full-time. There's a couple other part-time too, for sure.
Council? That's what you want.
Suggest the council president meet with Marissa and iron out the bugs, but
Yep.
this is, towards what we're looking for, I think.
Okay. That'll work. And I made a note to add the, receiving of the transfer document for our agenda next month.
I guess I have another question.
Yeah,
What's above the line and below the line? So there's Commissioner 153 mailroom 7233, and then it's listed again on down below.
She didn't work out, she only worked like a couple days. If you notice, the top says employee start date, and then there's a bold line,
Oh,
and it says termination date.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
is there anything else we wanna see on here, council? Yep, go ahead and roll call on the motion to receive this report moving forward.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb. Yes. Ryan.
Yes.
Cantz.
Yes.
Piper.
Yes. All right. The other new business, council. All right, elected officials and department heads. Have any?
Hello, Council. Melanie Marshall, Delaware County Fair Board member. I'm here promoting the fair this month because it is quickly coming up on us. If you get the Muncie magazine, our entire schedule is in there. We've got a full page in that Muncie magazine. We've got lots of fun 4-H activities and displays. We've got lots of great things in the Jane Lassiter Memorial Grandstand with a couple of new events there this year. And the Rural King Free Stage has lots of great entertainment that is free. We'll have a lot of vendors in Heartland Hall. So just want to invite everyone to come out and enjoy. And of course, there will be lots of good fair food. So just wanted to be sure that you were aware and invite you all to come out. Thank you. Any questions?
But just a reminder that folks can follow you on Facebook as well. I know a lot of the events have already been posted, so if you wanna get those on your social media calendar, it's very easy to do so on their
Oh, good.
Facebook page, yes.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So it says $5 per person when parking, max $15 a vehicle.
Right.
So does that mean if there's 5 people in the vehicle, they only pay $15?
Correct.
So you're gonna see people piling out of the car like a clown car.
Hey, that's great. We want them to come and buy lots of good fair food
Get 'em in
and enjoy the events.
I like that. I'm glad you guys put that in there.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Coroner.
Kevin Green, Delaware County Coroner. I sent everyone a report late last night and or this morning. I just wanted to go over it really quick. And I did send it to, somebody to put it in the official notes to be printed
Yeah,
off.
we should be in your packet right here.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Oh, you did get it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to let everybody know that, as of June, we've had a total of 234 cases. Out of those 234 cases that the office has taken, myself and Rhiannon and Gary have signed 112 death certificates. And what that difference is would be either an autopsy, a doctor will not sign that, I would sign that, or anything that is an accident or could not be determined. And so that's where there's a difference in that report right there. And with that trend going on right now, we're projected to have about 470 to 500 cases for the year. We have been going upwards of 600. I think the most we had was 676 2 or 3 years ago. And so that's a good thing for us. And then I just want to remind everyone that we have 3 full-time people, myself, Rhiannon, and Gary, and we have 7 part-time people taking calls. That's normally on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Wednesdays are the days that we take care of family members and bodies that have been abandoned, that are people that don't have money. Gary will go to Center Township, and that'll be an administrative day to ask Center Township or whatever township the person died in to ask for funding to have them be cremated. I know some people like this fun fact. Up until this point, we've taken care of 71 males and 41 females, so the males are dying a lot faster than the males. And the average age is 55. I've taken 60 calls. The next person is Gary with 40. Then we've got Rich Little, and then the other part-time people take more calls. One little side note, I emailed everybody during this meeting. It's just for your information to put on your radar. The state of Indiana for the past 6 years has been paying for our case management system for free. They have since not renewed that contract for that software. Therefore, they are currently shopping for new softwares out there right now. And so they just kind of sent us hey, you're gonna need to find something to do in the next 6 months. Well, they came back to us. Rhiannon had a little bit of a heart attack and called me screaming. We just had our association, our conference last week. They've extended it 6 months to try to figure out more stuff. And we met with a vendor last week to talk about our case management system. Why I'm telling everyone this right now is for a pilot period, probably for a year, we will have to pay for that ourselves. And that software is upwards of $10,000 a year. What that software does is that tracks all of our cases from next of kin, all of our pictures, all of our evidence and everything. So the state has been paying for that, and now they don't know if they're gonna be paying for it again. They're saying like, well, we're trying some stuff. We might know by the middle of 2025 if we're gonna pay for that. So I'm kind of working some magic to see if they'll help me split the cost. And I said I would be your guinea pig county if you'd help us share that cost instead of waiting to the last minute. So I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar. So when I could see Councilperson Webb being like, we didn't know about this, what's going on? I'd be like, hey, this got all dumped in our laps like in the last 2 months.
Did you ask them if they do decide to pay, if they'll reimburse us?
Well, yes, I already asked that because I went over to both. I was literally bouncing back between the State Department of Health and this vendor because I said, I'm gonna have to pay for it. And they said, why are you paying for it? We're gonna pay for it. And I go, when? Well, when we decide to. And I go, well, I can't stop people from dying for when you decide when to do this or not. So I've asked them to at least pick up part of the cost. So I don't want to ask for everything, but I'm slowly nudging my way in there.
It puts us 4,800.
That's for the lowest part for that one. The biggest, the one that we would need. Sorry that I gave you like both of them, so I was forwarding it straight to you from the person. I'm not trying to hide anything. I mean, we could get it, if that's the case, I'll just track everything in Excel and just save
Matt
everyone
and I
money.
know you're an Excel guru, so.
So, yeah.
This will be in your budget,
Yes, I'm gonna put it in our budget for 2025,
48 or the 10.
the 10.
I'll get it down to 48. We should have, you can't ask for more.
Yeah.
And for those of you wondering, shocked that the average age of death is 55, remember our average for quality of health in Delaware County is like 89 out of 92 counties. So we're near the bottom as far as healthy counties and the dollars we commit to our health program. So the fact that that age, I'm sure it's skewed by overdoses and accidental deaths, but the fact that it's not 85 isn't really that surprising.
I know most of on your chart, it looks like it's all natural.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I mean, there's, the accident numbers are relatively low and you've got a handful pending, but a lot of these are just natural causes.
Where do drug overdoses fall?
Accident,
Or accident?
yes. Unless it was a suicide, an accident, an overdose, that kind of falls in a gray area. If we have someone that has a letter that says, I am taking so many pills to end life, then yes, we could do that. But if we come back as a tox, it's gonna be accidental.
Any other questions?
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Gavin, for this.
Okay, you're Phil, you can,
The sheriff wanted you to be aware that he did present to the merit board at the last meeting about the drop program. And he did unanimously agree to keep the drop program growing without the sunset clause within it. And he has that documentation that he sent.
it's in our packet.
So, okay. Yep. He just wanted me to make sure that you were aware of that.
I was going to ask if no one came up and spoke, so it was the one last document in the folder.
I wasn't given an option.
Thank
Did
you.
need anything else from us then on that?
I believe that we do. We don't need anything else, right?
And I have the original document here.
Still need to,
Sign it.
we still need to approve it, it was tabled.
Oh, we tabled it.
I thought he said something about that he wanted to be here. So are we voting on this?
If we take it off the table.
Did he
was
want
fine
us
with
to
it,
vote
that's-
on it without him here?
Yes, he sent the document with me, the original. So he was fine with that.
There were amendments that were made to the language since the last meeting. Nothing that wasn't discussed, but it was essentially, we clarified, previously, it wasn't completely clear in the language in the beginning that there were essentially those two different pools of people who were eligible to get in based on dates of service and their start date. So we clarified that language. Otherwise, we didn't make any other changes. So that was the one change to show that, I'll just read it because it's brief. Participants who are otherwise eligible to participate may elect to participate at any time upon reaching a minimum of 20 years of service, but prior to reaching 32 years of service if hired prior to October 4th of 2010, or 26 years of service if hired after October 4th of 2010 and thereafter. So that was the one clarification that was made.
I did get a text from Tony asking us to vote, wanting us to vote on it if we were so inclined.
So is it currently presented with the sunset clause not included?
Correct, that was removed
when it was introduced previously.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll make a motion to remove it from the table.
Second,
Motion by Ryan, second by Bill. Do we have any further discussion? Moving from the table, roll call, please.
Ms. Flanagan.
yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
Struggle.
Yes.
Webb.
Yes.
Wyatt.
Yes.
Cantz. Yes. Piper.
Yes. All right, and now, is it just a roll call then for
Motion amended, then.
Yeah, it'd be.
motion as amended?
Yeah, you
As amended.
amend it as, or approve it as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Ryan to motion to approve as amended. Roll call, please.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Ms. Mokel.
Yes.
Mr. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt.
Yes.
Mr. Cantz. Yes. Ms. Piper.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need this original document with our president's signature on it, or do you just use your copy?
This is the agreement that has
Their signatures.
multiple signatures. Might be
Yeah.
easier to use yours.
Alright, so I think we have everything for that now. Any other elected officials or department heads? Hearing none, we'll move on. Do we have anyone sign up for public comment? Yeah, to the microphone, please.
Is there a difference between a tax abatement and a tax credit? And if there is a difference, are there guidelines on tax credits that are similar to the tax abatement?
You wanna handle that, Bill, or?
Well, the tax credits that PWG was talking about are credits from the state. We don't have any role in that, and yes, there are very definite guidelines as to the granting of those tax credits. The tax abatement is simply a local decision.
Mr. Music, do you mind going back to the microphone? I'm sorry. We just wanna make sure we get on the recording.
So the tax credits are coming from the state, not from Delaware County. Yeah. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay, all right, thank you.
I didn't see the
Yeah, sure.
In regards to the board appointments, first of all, thank you for tabling that for the future. But with the descriptions, I heard it said that we don't have the description for that. I think not only are you doing a disservice to those in the community that could have untapped talents to serve on these boards, I think you're likely doing a disservice to yourself as well by appointing people to the boards without having an accurate description of what you're appointing them to. So I would encourage you, when you get back to these two boards specifically, and then also in October, make sure that you have those and also that they're being put out to the public. I know I've been approached having people ask questions about boards and what they are and would they be a good fit? Do I think they would be a good fit? I don't think I'm the decision maker on that. But I do think we have a community full of talented people that could serve and are interested in it, but they don't really know what they're getting themselves into because we don't have accurate descriptions of these boards. So gathering that for the future and making sure that we're putting out the opportunity for everyone and then the opportunity for you guys to make effective decisions in your appointments as well.
Don't disagree. Matt, I'll let you help me with that to, reach out to all the directors, cause all we're provided with is a spreadsheet.
Right.
That literally says, and we can verify that the times and meeting times and locations, and sometimes those change and we don't get even notified that they've changed. I know that happened with the animal shelter a few years back, like the date changed, the time, the location, and we're never privy to it. So I'll have Matt help me with that to reach out to those directors.
Amber, just to piggyback off of that, I think that what we're doing is kind of like it's a growing process. When I first was elected to the council in 2020, started in 2021, we didn't have anything in place. There was no advance notification. We walked in there, we sit down, and we found out there were 10 boards open.
And of course, no one applied because they didn't know, so we just reappointed the same people that were there before. And I made it a goal of mine to increase the notifications for the public so we could get more greater participation amongst the public, because you're right, there is a lot of people out there who want to serve the community. They don't necessarily want to be elected officials, but they want to serve. They just don't know how to get involved. And I think we've really increased that. We've got quite a few names just for the boards that we tabled today. I believe yours is on there as well. And I think increasing or including the descriptions that you mentioned is just another stage of us growing in that process and making sure we fine tune it. And I agree with you. I hope we get that included as well, because only the public benefits, right? If we keep pointing the same people over and over and over, it just hurts everybody. So I hope we get that as well.
Thank you. We're getting there. Thank you for those comments.
Council,
Yes, ma'am.
may both public speakers come back and state their name and
Yes.
where they're from, please, so
Yes.
for our minutes.
Yes, that would be great.
Thank you. Amber Green, 5500 West Autumn Springs Court.
Thank you.
Chris Music, 311 North Mix Avenue.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment? All right, hearing none. Any comments from, probably does?
That was a surprise, Dan.
Oh,
Right?
Yep.
So, real quick, I'm just gonna bring this up because it was, a formalized request, and Ben and I met with, judges Mayor, Dowling and, Judy Calhoun, along with Emily. The topic was judicial lit. There was a question on the last council meeting about whether or not, where that, I guess, request, if I can call it that, was done around judicial lit. They wanted to state their support for us to push, for judicial lit. Ben did a really good job of really just describing what the judicial lit percent, which is a 0.2% of lit, can be approved for court administrator, court reporters, and bailiffs, I believe, is the third one. So it's very, very explicit, very limited in what it can actually be used for. So we did listen to that. I did mention to President Piper and others that I've spoke to that I gave my honest feedback about the judicial lit. I indicated that I don't think it's going to get tackled this year. Two, that the conversation probably needs much more broad. We are a co-ed county, which means that our public safety certified shares, edit are voted on by not only county council, but city council and all the townships and towns, that have a fiscal, that receive certified shares currently. So it's probably, 8 or 10, whatever the number is, entities. And your percentage of vote actually is based on your population. So the city of Muncie has a larger percentage of that vote than even county council. So that is part of the distribution. There are county council specific lits that we have access to, 911, EMS, jail, now the judicial one, amongst, I think that's it. That we have the ability to implement without that co-ed council's input. But I think in for collaboration reasons, we should be having a more broad discussion with those other entities about our lit percentage. Our lit percentage is 1.5%. It's in the lower third of the counties in Indiana. There's a lot of factors that go into what that potential lit number could or couldn't be, but ultimately, my statement to the judges was in essence that I don't think a one-off lit increase would, one, fly with very many people, and two, should be taken into account without reviewing all of our lit allotments today. One thing that Jessica and I did learn at our council training or whatever it was this week in the state council meeting was that the 911 PSAP lit actually can be taken off of the top of the public safety lit before it's distributed to the other entities. So there is actually some notion that perhaps how 911 is funded, there should be potentially a discussion for that. What I did find from other counties was that they have lit committees, so 3 members of county council, say 4 members from city council, plus representatives from each of the other taxing units can come together for a work session or discussion about lit and gaps and concerns and outright, lack of support for that. So the judges were pushing, asking me specifically, well, how fast can we get that together? And I didn't really know the answer to that. I think that we'll have to have some dialogue on how we could actually bring together the disparate taxing units for a discussion on that. If nothing else, since we're being pushed to do it, we probably should at least have a mechanism to have a conversation. So that was that on that. I do.
have one more thing with that, Mike,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, so we're on topic. So Matt and I attended the ARC statewide county council training over the weekend. We were there Friday for the advanced budget and finance meeting. And then the actual county council portion on Saturday. And if I remember correctly, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe only one county in the room is currently doing the judicial lit tax.
I didn't hear even that, but
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
I think it was one.
You said that the city of Muncie has a larger vote, they actually have an absolute majority.
Yeah, I do.
So if they pass something, it's done.
Yeah, there's 60-some% of the lit council pie.
For that very reason is the reason why I think if we can get together a lit committee from our side and their sides, and anyone else who has that, some level of input to sit down to have that discussion.
Be aware that they've got the biggest stick.
Yeah. I don't like to be sticked, so there was that. Real quick, back to the, job description classification. One thing we also discussed, there was a big discussion about open door and the open door regulations and such, and we can call a work session, as long as the auditor is included, it's open to the public, but a work session could be called, where, we take the input from all of the department heads, we talk about, the classifications and such, and work through perhaps some of the details on that, changes that need to be made and what have you. That is an option that I had not heard before, I wasn't aware of personally, because I'm probably new, but so it's a public meeting, there's no agenda, it needs the auditor there. It can be worked where we can all, get in a room, it is open to the public and have a discussion on how we work through some of those details. So to me, that's an option after we get some of that feedback and prior to our next ordinance discussion.
Well, and I know Henry County utilizes that process for during budget hearings too. They'll have work sessions and meet beforehand, so. And that might not be a bad idea for a lit committee, even doing that in a
Yeah, it's a work session.
work session as well.
I made it real fast, so I appreciate, Councilmember Cantz and Jessica for meeting with the judges. I know that they've been pretty vocal about wanting to push, the increase, and it kind of stems from kind of what we were doing with the beginning of the meeting. The legislature passed a law which allows you to do this, so people are going to push the council to capitalize on it. It's that simple. That's the way it works. And for those who are in opposition, I made no secret that I'm opposed to raising any tax. Those who are in opposition, the current request isn't to raise the lit tax to pave roads or go to our schools or do all. It's to pay employees more money, right? So just keep that in mind when the discussion comes up. It's strictly to pay employees more money, certain employees, not all employees. So I wanted to just put that on the record. The other thing, I just wanted to say, the fair is in a couple weeks. Miss Melanie got up there and spoke. It's a big event, and encourage everybody to
to show up, go up multiple times. I took my child to the 4-H stuff last year. She really liked that. If you've not got an opportunity to experience much farm life, you're a city person, you should really check it out. It's definitely a pretty neat experience, and definitely take advantage of the grandstand attractions, the acts they brought in. I know that the fair board worked very hard to get these teams in and get this entertainment. So let's go out there and support them, support Delaware County, and go make some memories with your family. So I just wanted to
One
mention
other
that.
quick thing, sorry, Ryan, that you brought up that I forgot, was relative to the judges. Is one other statement that was made is that I also don't think that there probably would be widespread support for any lit increases without a detailed review of expenditures within county government, which has not happened, in my opinion. We're gonna talk to Ed, I think, after a little bit about some reporting and some things that we hope we can help, facilitate some things moving forward. But I do think that, to that end, I did make that statement that I don't know that there would be widespread support if in fact we have not, squeezed the turnip, so to speak, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But, on that front.
Matt and I had
I agree.
really great conversations with council members from Henry County, Jay County, Blackford County. They were very willing to share documentation with us and some of the processes they go through. So I know Matt received most of that documentation, so we can share that out too. But it was one of the better AIC County Council statewide meetings I've been to. The collaboration and just communication amongst the other counties. So kind of bummed it was just the two of us because it was literally one of the best that I participated in, and I feel like we got a lot of information out. On a more positive note, Ryan, you'll like this part with the individual income tax for the state of Indiana. They did provide us with documentation that Senator Alexander is supposed to give me copies for all of you. But just outlining the Indiana income tax decreases for the next all the way through 2027. So they will be lowering your state income taxes. So that was, I knew you'd appreciate
Yes, ma'am.
that. So
And to what Matt said earlier, he did say 1.5%, I believe is ours. The lowest in the state is 0.5%. Just for information purposes.
but the highest is maxed out at 2.5.
Yeah,
Except for
2.5 is
Marion
the
County
max.
is 3 something. They get an exception,
But
but
that's a good point. You can't go higher than 2.5, correct?
right. And also there's something to keep in mind when you're talking about income tax or local income tax at max 2.5, like we can decide, or 1.5, we can decide how much percent goes into each of those. Like even though the city holds the majority share and they could pass any time they wanted, we could still then determine how much goes into edit or goes into our certified share. Right, is that correct? Public safety, we can determine.
You divide up the pie.
Anyway, basically within the lits that, statute gives the county council discretion as to raise or lower, those would then be factored in. Certain county lits get paid prior to the certified shares.
Which is that paid off the top that Matt was mentioning with the
Yeah.
PSAP. Yeah,
He did
so,
good. That it said something out a couple of weeks ago where it broke down each one. It was very helpful.
but we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't educating ourselves on all these things and learning about them, so. Do we have any other comments from council? All right, our next meeting is Tuesday, July 23rd at 9 a.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Eugene, roll call please.
Flanagan.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
Stokel.
Yes.
Webb. Yes. Wyatt.
Yes.
Stamps. Yes. Piper.
Yes. All right, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
but I don't want to approve.